My hand froze mid-swipe as I stared at the photo on my phone, my daughter, Emily, in a white wedding dress, beaming beside a man I barely recognized. I felt the mug slip from my other hand, coffee splashing across the kitchen table, but I couldn't look away from the screen. "Emily, did you get married?" I typed, my fingers shaking. The reply came seconds later. "Yeah, Mom. Yesterday. Just a small thing." I read her words again and again, my heart pounding. Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I there? The answer was a silence that stretched for hours, until finally, it was just family, Mom. I sat there, the word family echoing in my mind, and realized I hadn't even been an afterthought. I was outside the frame, a detail left out of the picture. My name is Carol Ann Foster. For 64 years, I believe family was everything. I raised Emily alone after her father died, working 2 jobs, saving every penny so she could have the life I never did. I always imagined I'd be there on her wedding day, holding her hand, watching her step into her future. But now, all I had was a photo I wasn't meant to see and a silence I didn't know how to fill. That night, lying awake in the dark, I realized something had changed forever. I had spent my whole life being a mother to someone who no longer needed me. And in that quiet, a new Carol began to wake up, one who was done waiting for an invitation to her own daughter's life. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you what I did next, because what happened after I saw that photo would change everything. Not just for Emily, but for me. Everything that led to that moment, the photo, the silence, the ache in my chest began years earlier, in a tiny apartment where it was just Emily and me against the world. I remember the early days when our lives were simple but full of hope, and every sacrifice I made felt like a promise for her future. I was 24 when her father died, leaving me with a toddler, a stack of bills, and a heart that felt too heavy to carry. But Emily was my reason to keep going. Her laughter filled the rooms, her tiny arms wrapped around my neck at night. Her questions about the world both exhausting and exhilarating. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing at a diner in the mornings, cleaning offices at night. I learned to stretch every dollar, to make a pot of soup last 3 days, to mend clothes and find joy in the little things. Emily never knew how tight things were. I made sure of that. She had birthday parties with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings with secondhand toys wrapped in bright paper, and summers spent at the city pool, splashing and shrieking with delight. We had our own traditions. Friday night movies on the couch, pancakes for dinner when the week had been especially hard, and long walks through the park. Dreaming about the future, Emily was a bright, loving child. She'd sit at the kitchen table, coloring while I paid bills, and tell me about her dreams, becoming a teacher, traveling the world, maybe even getting married in a big white dress. I promised her she could be anything, that I would do whatever it took to help her get there. And for a long time it felt like we were a team, just the 2 of us, facing the world together. But as Emily grew older, things began to shift. It was subtle at first, a missed phone call here, a shorter conversation there. She started spending more time with friends, joining clubs, and taking on after-school jobs. I was proud of her independence, but I missed the closeness we'd shared. I told myself it was normal, that every mother has to let go eventually. Still, I felt the distance growing, like a slow, invisible tide pulling her away. When Emily went to college, I was both proud and terrified. I took on extra shifts to help with tuition, sent care packages every month, and called every Sunday. She always answered, but her voice was different, brighter, busier, full of new names and new plans. She came home less often, and when she did, she seemed restless, eager to get back to her life. I tried not to take it personally, but the apartment felt emptier with each visit. Then she met Ryan. The first time she brought him home, I saw the way her eyes lit up when he walked into the room. He was polite, charming, and ambitious, everything a mother should want for her daughter. But there was something about him, something I couldn't quite name, that made me uneasy. He talked a lot about his family, about their traditions and expectations, about the importance of appearances. Emily seemed to hang on his every word, eager to fit into his world. As their relationship deepened, I felt myself being pushed further to the margins. Emily started spending holidays with Ryan's family, missing our traditions for theirs. She stopped asking for my advice, stopped sharing the little details of her life. When I tried to talk to her about it, she brushed me off. "It's just different now, Mom. I'm building my own life." I told myself she was right, that this was what I'd raised her for, to be independent, to find her own happiness. But the ache in my chest grew sharper with every passing year. Ryan's family was welcoming on the surface, but I always felt like an outsider. His mother, Linda, was gracious but distant, her compliments always tinged with a hint of condescension. His father, Charles, asked polite questions but never really listened to the answers. They lived in a big house on the other side of town, hosted elegant dinners, and talked about vacations and investments I could never afford. Emily seemed to fit right in, her laughter blending with theirs, her stories shifting to match their interests. I tried to keep up, to be the mother Emily needed, but I felt myself fading into the background. I sent cards for every occasion, offered to help with wedding planning, and tried to stay involved in her life. But my calls went unanswered more often, my invitations politely declined. I watched as Emily became someone I barely recognized, confident, polished, and just a little bit out of reach. But there were signs Carol had ignored, signs that would soon become impossible to overlook. The way Emily hesitated before introducing me to her friends, the way she avoided talking about her relationship with Ryan, the way she seemed embarrassed by my job, my apartment, my life. I told myself it didn't matter, that love was enough, that she would come back to me in time. Now, as I return to the present, I steel myself for the days ahead and the mounting sense of loss. I know the woman Emily has become is not the little girl I raised, but I also know that I am still her mother. And as I sit in the quiet of my kitchen, staring at the photo of her wedding day, I realize that the story isn't over. Not for her and not for me. Now as I return to the present, I steel myself for the days ahead and the mounting sense of loss. I know the woman Emily has become is not the little girl I raised, but I also know that I am still her mother. And as I sit in the quiet of my kitchen, staring at the photo of her wedding day, I realize that the story isn't over, not for her and not for me. The days after seeing that photo passed in a fog. I went to work, came home, and moved through my routines as if on autopilot. I tried to call Emily again, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I left messages, gentle, hopeful, never angry. "I love you, Emily. I just want to hear your voice." The silence that came back was louder than any argument. One afternoon, I stopped by the house I'd kept for Emily, the little blue bungalow on Maple Street. I'd bought it years ago, scraping together a down payment with the hope that one day, when Emily was ready, it would be hers. I'd paid the mortgage every month, kept up the repairs, and even planted roses in the front yard, imagining her future family growing up there. I hadn't visited in a while, but I still had a key. I wanted to check on the place, to feel close to her in some small way. As I pulled up to the curb, I noticed a new car in the driveway. The porch light was on, and there were shoes by the door, men's shoes, and a pair of high heels I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I let myself in. The house was different. The furniture had been rearranged, new photos lined the mantel, and the kitchen was filled with dishes I'd never seen before. I heard laughter from the back room, Emily's laughter, and a man's voice. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening as they talked about dinner plans, about work, about their life together. I realized in that moment that Emily and her new husband had moved into the house without telling me. My house, the one I'd worked so hard to keep for her. I felt a wave of anger and hurt crash over me. I wanted to march into the kitchen and demand an explanation, but I couldn't move. I was a ghost in my own life, watching from the shadows as my daughter built a future that didn't include me. I slipped out quietly, my hands shaking. As I sat in my car, I saw Emily's in-laws pull up in their SUV. They greeted Emily and her husband with hugs and laughter, carrying bags of groceries and bottles of wine. I watched as they settled in, making themselves at home in the house I'd sacrificed so much to provide. I realized then that they had become the center of Emily's world, that their influence was everywhere, from the way she dressed to the way she spoke, to the way she looked right through me when our paths crossed. The emotional blow was devastating. I drove home in tears, replaying every moment, every sacrifice, every hope I'd ever had for Emily's happiness. I thought about the years I'd spent working 2 jobs, the nights I'd stayed up worrying about her future, the dreams I'd built around that little house. I felt foolish, used, and utterly alone. But as the days passed, something inside me began to shift. The pain didn't fade, but it hardened into resolve. I realized that I couldn't keep waiting for Emily to come back to me, couldn't keep letting her in-laws decide my place in her life. I had to protect my dignity, my legacy, and my own heart, even if it meant making choices I never imagined. Could Carol protect her dignity and her legacy from those who wanted to erase her? The question echoed in my mind as I stared at the deed to the house, the keys heavy in my hand. I decided, quietly and firmly, that I would take control of my own future, starting with the house. If Emily and her new family wanted a life without me, then I would give them exactly what they asked for, and I would do it on my own terms. The days after I found Emily living in the house I'd kept for her were a blur of heartbreak and confusion. I tried to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding, that she would call, that she would explain. But the silence between us only grew heavier. I went to work, came home, and stared at the phone, willing it to ring. When it finally did, it was Emily's voice, bright and hurried, as if nothing had changed. "Hi, Mom. Sorry I've been so busy. Ryan's parents have been helping us settle in. Isn't it great that the house was available?" She didn't ask if I minded. She didn't even say thank you. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Emily, I wish you'd told me. I thought we'd talk about it first." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Mom, you're always so emotional. It's just a house. We needed a place, and you weren't using it. Ryan's parents said it would be fine. They even helped us move in." That was the first time I heard the edge in her voice, the hint of impatience that would become more familiar in the weeks to come. I hung up feeling smaller than I had in years, as if my place in her life had shrunk to a footnote. The pressure from Emily and her in-laws to move on became relentless. Linda called me one afternoon, her tone syrupy sweet. "Carol, I hope you're not upset. We just want what's best for Emily. You've done so much, but it's time to let her build her own life. You should focus on yourself now. Take a trip. Join a club." I could hear the dismissal in her words, the way she made it sound like a kindness. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the quiet, feeling the walls of my world closing in. Flashbacks haunted me. I remembered the first time Emily came home from college with new clothes and a new accent, laughing at jokes I didn't understand. I remembered the way she'd started to pull away, spending holidays with Ryan's family, skipping our traditions for theirs. I remembered the look on her face when I tried to talk about the future, the way she'd brushed me off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I wondered if I'd done something wrong, if I'd held on too tightly, if I'd made her feel like she had to choose. But as the weeks passed, my heartbreak began to harden into something else. I started to notice things I'd missed before. The way Linda and Charles seemed to orchestrate every detail of Emily's life. The way Ryan always spoke for her. The way Emily's laughter sounded forced when they were around. I saw how quickly they'd moved into the house, how they'd changed the locks, how they'd started making decisions about repairs and renovations without asking me. I realized that I was being pushed out, not just of Emily's life, but of the future I'd worked so hard to build. I tried to talk to Emily, to ask her if she was happy, if she felt safe. She brushed me off, telling me I was overreacting, that I needed to trust her. "Ryan's family is just helping, Mom. They're good people. You should be grateful." But I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the way she looked away when I pressed too hard. The family's sense of unity unraveled. I stopped being invited to dinners, to birthdays, to holidays. When I did see Emily, it was always in the presence of her in-laws, always with Linda hovering nearby, always with Charles making polite conversation that never went deeper than the weather. I felt like a guest in my own life, a stranger to my own daughter. My guilt gnawed at me. I wondered if I'd failed Emily, if I'd made her feel like she had to choose between me and her new family. I replayed every decision, every argument, every moment I'd tried to hold on when I should have let go. But I also knew that I couldn't keep letting them erase me. I started keeping a journal, writing down every conversation, every slight, every time I felt pushed aside. I began to pay closer attention, to listen for the things they didn't say. One afternoon, I stopped by the house to drop off a box of old photos for Emily. Linda met me at the door, her smile tight. "Oh, Carol, you really don't need to worry about these things anymore. We're taking care of everything. Why don't you let us handle it?" I handed her the box, my hands shaking. "I just wanted Emily to have these. They're her memories, too." Linda took the box, her eyes cold. "We'll make sure she gets them." As I walked away, I felt a surge of anger. I realized that I was done being grateful, done being polite, done letting them decide my place in Emily's life. I started asking questions about the house, about the finances, about the decisions being made without me. I called the utility companies, the bank, the insurance agent. I discovered that my name had been quietly removed from some of the accounts, that repairs had been made and billed to me without my knowledge, that the house was being used as collateral for a loan I hadn't approved. The more I uncovered, the more unsettled I became. I saw how easily I could be erased, how quickly everything I'd built could be taken away. I realized that Linda and Charles were not just helping Emily, they were controlling her, shaping her future to fit their own plans. I saw the way Ryan deferred to his parents, the way Emily's voice grew smaller every time they were in the room. But as Carol dug deeper, she uncovered a secret that changed everything. The secret revealed itself in the most ordinary way. I was sorting through a stack of mail that had been forwarded from the house, bills, advertisements, a few stray letters addressed to Emily. Tucked between them was an envelope from a law firm I didn't recognize, addressed to me as the property owner. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a notice about a second mortgage application, with Ryan's name listed as the applicant and Linda as the co-signer. My signature was nowhere to be found, but the paperwork claimed I had given my consent. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. I read it again and again, searching for some mistake, some explanation. But the truth was clear. They had tried to use my house, Emily's house, as collateral for a loan I hadn't approved. I felt a wave of nausea, a cold anger rising in my chest. I thought of all the times Linda had told me to let go, all the times Charles had smiled and said, "We'll take care of it." They hadn't just pushed me out. They were trying to take everything I had left. I called the law firm, my voice shaking. The woman on the other end was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Miss Foster, but the application was denied due to missing documentation. We sent a notice to all parties involved." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I realized that Emily had no idea what was happening. She trusted Ryan and his parents, believed they were helping her build a future. She didn't know they were putting her at risk, using her trust to cover their own debts. I needed proof. I started going through every document I could find, bank statements, insurance policies, old emails. I found a string of messages between Linda and a loan officer discussing creative solutions for the house. I found receipts for repairs I'd never authorized, checks written from my account with signatures that looked just enough like mine to pass. I found a draft of a letter, never sent, from Charles to Emily, urging her to convince your mother to sign the papers. She'll listen to you. The more I uncovered, the more my heart broke. I saw how easily Emily had been manipulated, how quickly she'd been swept up in the plans of people who saw her as a means to an end. I thought of the little girl who used to hold my hand, who used to promise we'd always be a team. I wanted to protect her from the truth, to shield her from the pain of realizing how deeply she'd been betrayed. But I also knew I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let Linda and Charles take everything I'd worked for, everything I'd saved for Emily's future. I was torn. If I exposed the truth, I risked shattering Emily's world, forcing her to choose between me and the family she'd married into. If I stayed silent, I risked losing everything, my home, my dignity, my place in her life. I replayed every conversation, every warning sign I'd ignored, every moment I'd chosen peace over confrontation. I realized that I was in over my head, but I couldn't turn back now. That night, I called my oldest friend, Marcia, a retired paralegal who had always been my sounding board. I told her everything, my voice breaking as I laid out the evidence. She listened quietly, then said, Carol, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect Emily, even if she doesn't understand right now. Gather everything. Make copies. Don't confront them until you're ready. I nodded, wiping away tears. I just wanted her to be happy, Marcia. I never wanted any of this. Marcia's voice was gentle but firm. You did everything you could. Now it's time to stand up for yourself. And for her. I spent the next few days quietly gathering more evidence, making copies of every document, every email, every receipt. I kept everything in a folder, hidden in the back of my closet. I watched Emily and Ryan from a distance, looking for signs that she suspected anything. She seemed happy, but I saw the worry in her eyes. The way she flinched when Linda raised her voice. The way she clung to Ryan's hand a little too tightly. Carol realized she was in over her head, but she couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, waiting to be revealed. And as I looked at the folder in my hands, I knew that the next step would change everything, for Emily, for me, and for the family we both thought we knew. Marcia's words echoed in my mind as I sat at my kitchen table, the folder of evidence heavy in my lap. I had always been the kind of woman who avoided conflict, who kept the peace for the sake of family. But now, as I looked at the forged signatures and secret emails, I knew I couldn't afford to be silent. I called Marcia again, my voice steadier this time. I need your help. I need to make sure I'm ready for whatever comes next. She came over that afternoon, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a yellow legal pad in hand. We spread the documents across the table, organizing them by date and subject. Marcia showed me how to make copies, how to keep a log of every interaction, how to document every phone call and text. If this goes to court, you'll need a clear record, she said. And if they try to intimidate you, you'll have proof. I felt a strange sense of empowerment as we worked. For the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. I started keeping a journal, writing down every conversation with Emily, every request from Linda or Charles, every time I felt pressured or dismissed. I saved voicemails, took screenshots, and made sure every document was backed up in a safe place. Marcia helped me draft a letter to the bank, notifying them of the forgery and requesting a freeze on any further transactions involving the house. Meanwhile, the in-laws' actions grew bolder. Linda called me one evening, her tone brisk and businesslike. Carol, we need you to sign a few papers for the house. It's just a formality, nothing to worry about. I told her I'd need to review everything with my lawyer. There was a pause, then a forced laugh. Of course, Carol, take your time. But I could hear the irritation in her voice, the impatience simmering just beneath the surface. Emily, caught in the middle, grew more anxious. She called less often, and when she did, her voice was strained. Mom, why are you making this so difficult? Ryan's parents are just trying to help. Can't you trust them? I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, but I held back. I just want to make sure everything is done right, Emily, for your sake as much as mine. She sighed, and I heard the distance in her voice. I wish you'd just let it go, but I couldn't let it go. I watched as Linda and Charles started making changes to the house, new appliances, new furniture, even a new security system that I hadn't approved. I received bills for repairs I hadn't authorized, notices from the city about permits I hadn't requested. It was as if they were trying to erase any trace of me, to make the house theirs in every way that mattered. The cat-and-mouse game wore on my nerves. I worried constantly about losing the house, about losing Emily, about what would happen if the truth came out. I felt guilty for keeping secrets from my daughter, for not trusting her enough to tell her everything. But every time I saw the way Linda and Charles controlled her, the way Ryan deferred to his parents, I knew I was doing the right thing. I was protecting my legacy, and I was protecting Emily, even if she didn't understand. Marcia was my anchor. She reminded me to breathe, to take care of myself, to remember that I wasn't alone. You're stronger than you think, Carol. You've survived worse than this. Don't let them bully you into giving up. Her faith in me gave me the courage to keep going, even when I felt like I was drowning. But just as I thought I had everything under control, the in-laws made a move I never expected. One afternoon, I received a letter from their lawyer, accusing me of harassment and threatening legal action if I didn't cease and desist my inquiries into the house. The letter was full of legal jargon and veiled threats, but the message was clear. They knew I was onto them. and they were ready to fight. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, and realized that the confrontation I'd been dreading was finally here. There was no turning back. The letter from the in-laws' lawyer sat on my kitchen table for 2 days before I finally picked up the phone. My hands shook as I dialed Emily's number, but my voice was steady. "Emily, I need you to come over. Bring Ryan, and please ask your in-laws to join us. There are things we need to discuss, face to face." She hesitated, but something in my tone must have told her this wasn't a request. "Okay, Mom, we'll be there." The day of the meeting, I set out the folder of evidence on the dining room table. Marcia sat beside me, her presence a quiet reassurance. I watched the clock, my heart pounding, until I heard the sound of cars in the driveway. Emily and Ryan arrived first, their faces tense. Linda and Charles followed, their expressions unreadable, the air around them charged with a kind of brittle confidence. We sat in silence for a moment, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, I spoke. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy, but I can't ignore what's been happening any longer." Linda's lips curled into a practiced smile. "Carol, if this is about the house, I think we've made ourselves clear. You're making things difficult for everyone. Why can't you just let Emily and Ryan build their life?" I met her gaze, refusing to look away. "This isn't just about the house. It's about trust. It's about respect. And it's about the truth." I slid the folder across the table. "I know about the second mortgage application. I know about the forged signatures, the unauthorized repairs, the bills in my name. I know you tried to use my house as collateral for your debts." Charles's face darkened. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Those were just misunderstandings, paperwork errors." Marcia spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "We have copies of every document. We've spoken to the bank, the city, and the law firm. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate attempt to take something that didn't belong to you." Ryan shifted in his seat, his eyes darting between his parents and Emily. "Mom, Dad, is this true?" Linda's composure faltered for the first time. "We did what we had to do. We were trying to help you, Ryan, to help Emily. Carol wasn't using the house. It made sense for us to what?" I interrupted, my voice trembling with anger. "To steal it? To erase me from my own daughter's life?" Emily's face was pale, her hands clenched in her lap. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this." I looked at her, my heart breaking all over again. "Emily, I wanted you to have that house. I worked for years so you'd have a place to call your own. But I never imagined you'd let someone else take it from me. I never imagined you'd let them treat me like I was nothing." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just wanted everyone to get along. I thought if I didn't choose sides, things would work out." Charles slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous. Carol, you're making a scene. You're trying to ruin our family." I turned to him, my voice steady. "No, Charles. I'm trying to save mine. I'm tired of being pushed aside, of being told to move on while you take everything I've built. I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening." Linda's voice rose, desperate now. "You're just bitter because Emily's grown up." "Because she doesn't need you anymore," I shook my head. "I'll always be her mother, and I'll always fight for her, even if she doesn't understand right now." Ryan finally spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "Mom, Dad, you went too far. You should have told us. You should have asked." Linda's eyes flashed. "We did this for you. For your future," Emily's voice broke. "But you lied to me. You lied to all of us." The room erupted into accusations and tears. Marcia tried to keep things civil, but the truth was out, and there was no putting it back. I watched as Emily's world crumbled, as she realized the people she'd trusted most had betrayed her. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but I knew she needed to face the truth. In the chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had risked everything, my dignity, my relationship with my daughter, my own security, to bring the truth to light. I had stood up for myself, for my legacy, for the love that had defined my life. And as I looked around the table, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. But the fallout from this confrontation would change everything, for better or worse. The family I had fought so hard to protect was broken. But in that brokenness, there was a chance for something new to grow. As the dust settled, I realized that the hardest battles are the ones we fight for the people we love, and that sometimes the only way to save them is to let the truth be known. The days after the confrontation felt like living in the ruins of a storm. The truth, once spoken, could not be unsaid. Linda and Charles were forced to face the consequences of their actions. The bank launched an investigation into the forged documents, and the city put a hold on all permits and repairs for the house. Word spread quickly through their social circle. Friends who had once admired their confidence now kept their distance, and invitations to dinners and parties dried up. The family's carefully constructed image of respectability and power crumbled in a matter of weeks. Legal troubles followed. The bank's lawyers called me to confirm my side of the story, and Marcia helped me prepare every document, every email, every receipt. Linda and Charles tried to downplay their involvement, but the evidence was overwhelming. The mortgage application was denied, and the bank threatened to press charges for fraud. The city fined them for unauthorized renovations, and the insurance company canceled the policy on the house. For the first time, Linda and Charles were forced to answer for the damage they had caused. Emily was left standing in the wreckage, forced to choose between the family she had married into and the mother who had always been there for her. For days, she barely spoke to me, her face drawn and haunted. I gave her space, knowing she needed time to process everything. I spent long hours walking the neighborhood, thinking about the choices I'd made, the secrets I'd kept, and the pain I'd caused by finally telling the truth. One evening, Emily showed up at my door. She looked older, more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Mom," she said quietly, "I'm sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have seen what was happening." She sat at my kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, and for the first time in years, she let herself be vulnerable. I thought I was protecting Ryan. I thought I was building a future, but I was just running from the past. I reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to run anymore, Emily. You just have to be honest with yourself, with the people you love. That's the only way to move forward," Ryan called a few days later. His voice was small, almost childlike. "I'm sorry, Carol. I didn't know how bad things were. I didn't want to believe it." I listened, my heart aching for him, for the boy who had been raised to believe that appearances mattered more than truth. "You're welcome here, Ryan," I told him. "But you have to decide what kind of life you want. You can't build it on lies." The family began to heal, but not without scars. Linda and Charles faced legal consequences, and their reputation was left in tatters. Emily and Ryan started counseling, determined to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of honesty. I joined them for a few sessions, sharing my own fears and hopes, my regrets and my dreams. It wasn't easy. There were days when the old wounds reopened, when anger and grief threatened to pull us apart. But there were also moments of grace, quiet dinners, shared laughter, the slow return of trust. I found myself reflecting on forgiveness. Could I truly forgive Linda and Charles for what they'd done? Could I forgive Emily for her blindness, for the years she'd spent chasing someone else's approval? I realized that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a process, a choice I had to make every day. Some days it came easily. Other days it felt impossible, but I kept trying, because I knew that holding on to anger would only poison what was left of our family. Justice had been served, but redemption was harder to find. I watched as Emily struggled to rebuild her life, as Ryan tried to make amends, as Linda and Charles faced the consequences of their actions. I saw the pain in their eyes, the regret in their voices, and I knew that we were all paying a price for the secrets we'd kept. But could Carol ever truly trust her family again? The question lingered, a quiet ache beneath the surface. I wanted to believe that love was stronger than betrayal, that forgiveness could mend even the deepest wounds. I wanted to believe that the family I had fought so hard to protect could find its way back to each other. As the family started to rebuild, I found hope in the small things, a shared meal, a gentle word, the sound of Emily's laughter. I knew the road ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time, with my family by my side. The months that followed were quieter, but not empty. The storm had passed, but its mark remained, a scar, not a wound. Emily and I found our way back to each other slowly, with awkward conversations and long walks through the neighborhood. Sometimes we talked about the past, about the choices we'd made and the things we'd left unsaid. Sometimes we just walked in silence, letting the rhythm of our footsteps say what words could not. Ryan joined us sometimes, his presence tentative but genuine. He apologized again and again, not just for his parents' actions, but for his own blindness. "I wanted so badly for everything to look perfect," he admitted one afternoon as we sat on a park bench, watching children play. "I didn't realize how much I was hurting the people who loved me." I squeezed his hand, feeling the truth of his words settle between us. "We all want to be seen, Ryan, but sometimes we forget to look at the people right in front of us." Emily and Ryan worked hard to rebuild their relationship. They went to counseling, learned to talk honestly, and made new plans for a simpler life, one that included everyone, not just the people with the right clothes or the right bank account. I helped where I could, but I also learned to step back, to let them make their own choices, even their own mistakes. It was a new kind of love, one that respected boundaries and honored the lessons we'd all learned. I found peace in small rituals. I started visiting the old family home on Sunday mornings, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, letting the memories wash over me. I remembered the years when it was just Emily and me, the laughter and the tears, the quiet strength that had carried us through. I realized that I was proud, not just of what I'd accomplished, but of who I'd become. I had stood up for myself, even when it meant standing alone. I had protected my daughter, not by shielding her from pain, but by trusting her to face the truth. One afternoon, as the sun set over the park, Emily joined me on the bench. We watched the sky turn gold and pink, the city lights flickering on in the distance. "Thank you, Mom," she said quietly. "For everything, for not giving up on me, for being brave when I wasn't." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. "We're both braver than we think," I told her. "Sometimes it just takes a little push to remember." "But what would you have done in my place? Would you have risked everything to protect your family, even if it meant facing painful truths? Would you have found the strength to stand up for yourself, even when it felt impossible?" These are the questions I still ask myself, even now, as I watch my family laugh and grow and forgive. The answers aren't easy. But as I walked home that evening, the city alive with possibility, I knew that I had done what I needed to do, not just for Emily, but for myself. And in that, I found a new beginning. If you've listened to my story this far, thank you for sharing this journey with me. I know I'm not the only one who's ever felt left behind, betrayed, or quietly replaced by the people they love most. Sometimes, the hardest lessons come from those closest to us, the ones who know our hearts, our sacrifices, and still choose to turn away. But I also know that healing is possible, even after the deepest wounds. Have you ever been betrayed or replaced by your own family? Have you ever felt like your years of love and sacrifice were suddenly invisible, or that your place in someone's life was quietly erased? What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have fought for your dignity, even if it meant risking everything? Or would you have stayed silent, hoping things would change on their own? I know there's no easy answer. Every family is different, every story unique. But I hope my experience reminds you that your voice matters, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stand up for yourself, even when it's hard. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a moment when you had to choose between keeping the peace and doing what was right for you? Did you ever have to set boundaries with someone you loved, even when it meant walking away? Please share your story in the comments below. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs right now. And if this story touched you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with a friend. Our community grows stronger with every voice, every lesson, every act of courage. And if you think this story was powerful, just wait until you hear what's coming next. In our next episode, we'll reveal another family secret, one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and forgiveness. You won't want to miss it. So, what would you have done in my place? I hope you'll join the conversation, because together we can find strength in our stories and hope in the truth. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for being part of this journey with me.